Hello, good evening, and welcome to the Majority Show. My name is Mark Devlin. I'm your host for this evening. This is Scotland's #1 politics show, and we are glad to have you every Wednesday going out live on Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. I'm here tonight with co-hosts Mary Devlin, who you all know, and Mark Zegveldt, who you don't. How are you doing tonight?
Good evening. I'm great, thanks. Good. Enjoying the weather.
Hello. Good. Well, some people might know Mark from Twitter. A lot of people might know him on Twitter.
That's correct. They will know you from Twitter, where you have a good following over there, actually. What are you going to be talking about with us tonight, Mary?
Well, tonight I'm going to be talking about rising crime figures in Scotland.
Oh, that's a shocker. Okay, and Mark, what are you going to be talking about?
The Lorna, Slater and the confidence vote in Parliament.
Plenty to talk about in there. And I'll be leading a discussion on the ups and downs of Sturgeon's Innocence tour.
And of course, we have Zoomer of the Week.
Yes, that would be great. So we'll be back with all that and much more in just a moment. Right, so welcome back to Scotland's #1 politics chat. I'm here with Mary. David is off for the week, and also with co-host Mark Zegveldt. Many of you may know from Twitter. Mark, tell us a little bit about how you get involved in fighting nationalism.
Well, I've always been involved in politics. I've always enjoyed politics, and basically, really, with Twitter, I didn't really have a lot of interest, but my brother-in-law put me onto it. And then I just started discussing Scottish politics and nationalism. I'm a strong supporter of the Union, of the UK, should I say, because I don't like calling it the Union, the UK. Right. So it just took off from there.
Right. You have quite a lot of followers already on Twitter. I think what Mary was saying, what was that, 18,000 or something like that?
Yeah, over 18,000 followers.
Over 18.
Right, that's good. Okay, shout out to those people there. And what have you been involved in anything particularly recently?
Yeah, I've started doing Twitter Spaces, and I host a Twitter show on Thursday nights, a regular one every Thursday at 7:00, and we discuss all the relevant situations that's going on in Scotland. And I sometimes have guests on that want to put a situation forward or a debate.
Right.
Like I've got one tomorrow about the NHS.
Oh, really?
So
okay.
We're going to be discussing that.
The Twitter Spaces are quite good. They're a bit like a radio phone-in show, a bit.
Yeah.
And people can say their piece for a couple of minutes, and then other people can come back on it. I would highly recommend it. I've been on a few of them, and they're good fun, actually. Quite good if you're on Twitter. So please do that. We'll come back to that a little bit in a moment. Now, some majority news. Last week I mentioned that our YouTube channel had been fixed, and thank you to everyone who got involved in that. That means if you're watching us on YouTube, you can now drop a donation to the majority or to us in the form of a super chat or a super thanks. Now, last week that we said that we would give a shout out to anyone who did donate through that, but we couldn't find the wee thing during the show. So a special shout out to Maria Cortege and to Daz Fulton for donating last week. And you will get a shout out if you do donate using the super thanks as well. All donations help our fight against toxic nationalism.
And wherever you are, please like, share and comment and tell your friends. Please, perhaps for next week's show, maybe ask a friend, get them to watch the show next week. And please extend our reach at the click of a button.
Oh, very good. And as usual, huge thanks to our friends at UK Union Voice and United Against Separation Facebook pages for where many of you are watching tonight. Thank you all for your comments there. Mary's going to talk about that.
Well, as usual, I'll be handling all your comments, so please make them short and snappy, and I'll try to get as many up on the screen as I can. Thank you.
Right, we've got a lot to talk about on the show today, so we look forward to your comments, and we'll be back in just a second. Right, so we'll start with the roundup of the week's news, I suppose. First thing is Nicola Sturgeon's Innocence tour continues. Nicola Sturgeon, the well-known backbencher, assembled the world's media twice this past week to proclaim her innocence. Perhaps we could understand why she was interviewed the first time, but not really the second, which was just a few hours later, it seemed. I suppose the first one was her coming back to her home after her arrest. Fair enough that at that time she'd been arrested as a suspect in Operation Branchform, and about missing funds or some misuse of funds in the SNP. So fair enough for the media to talk about it. As we mentioned last week, we're not allowed to discuss whether Sturgeon is guilty or innocent due to Scotland's restrictive contempt of court laws, which don't seem to stop Nicola herself actually proclaiming her innocence every few minutes.
Over and over and over.
Yes. I was wondering, actually, if she's proclaiming her innocence, then surely the media should be able to speculate as well. But, who knows? It seems to be, to me, that this contempt of court thing is arbitrary law. They could just pick a target and say that's a person we're going to go for. And, that was the point. So, and so it's a bit of a culture of fear, I suppose, amongst media. They say we can't actually talk about this, compared with the situation in the States, for example, where freedom of speech means that any media can talk about Donald Trump or his guilt or innocence as long as they like. And, you think you'd be able to do that here. Pro-independence media would be able to say, well, she thinks she's innocent. Well, others would say, well, perhaps that's not the case. Anyway, it's all a bit rubbish. I think. But anyway, let's have a wee listen to what she had to say outside her house in Uddingston.
Amongst you, I can't say very much just now. What I will say is reiterate the statement I issued last Sunday. I am certain that I have done nothing wrong. I intend to be back in Parliament in the early part of the week. I'll make myself available for questions then, obviously within the constraints that I am referring to right now. For now, I intend to go home, catch up with some family. I know I'm a public figure, I accept what comes with that, but I'm also a human being that's entitled to a bit of privacy, and my neighbours are also entitled to a bit of peace of mind as well. So thank you very much.
Have you considered stepping back from the SNP?
Look, I've done nothing wrong, and that is the only thing I'm going to assert today.
Have there been conditions placed on your arrest?
No,
after your arrest?
No, and I'm not going to get into anything other than that.
Would Nicola Sturgeon have suspended Nicola Sturgeon?
Look, I've done nothing wrong. It's for others to comment as they see fit, but that's my position and I'm entitled to take it. I'm going to go into my house.
Yeah, I don't know why she's entitled to take that position, to be honest. I mean, surely her lawyer should have just said, you know what, just shut STFU, I think the expression goes. But anyway, Mark, what do you think of all this Sturgeon's Innocence tour?
I think it's quite interesting that it's always I am, not done anything. It's never we. Now it's her husband and Colin Beattie. So I find that quite strange. It just seems she's detaching herself from her partner.
And also, detaching herself a little bit from the party as well, right?
Yeah. It's she did that speech outside the house, and by all accounts, it was her that called the press conference, and she did that speech on the day that Humza does his big speech, his first big speech about the Constitution. Now, is that by coincidence or is that on purpose? It's
a bit of a strange one, that, because
it is.
We'll find out. I mean, as we go through tonight, one of the things I think is quite noticeable is that when we're preparing the show, even it's like, well, where's the news about Humza? We'll mention him once or twice here, and he's been relegated to the back of the scene, as it were, not even waiting in the wings. He's been booted out the stage door. Basically, so, because Sturgeon is always there, ready to.
She's not putting the party first, is she?
No, certainly not putting the party first.
I've got quite a good comment here. I like this one.
Cool,
She says, Joe Red says, she said she's done nothing wrong. What she should have said is she's done nothing right.
Right. Well, that's it. I mean, it definitely seems a desire to keep herself front and centre of the story. Mark.
Yeah. It's always been about her. I don't think it's ever been about the party. Even when she was First Minister, it was never about the party. It was always a promotional tour of Nicola Sturgeon. I think the party came second to Nicola, and I still think the same. I think now she's trying to push the narrative, and I think we're going to see more and more of this as this investigation rumbles on.
Yeah, it seems a little bit. I think my feeling a little bit is that she's so used to being in control, that having the situation under her control, that she can't actually deal with something that's out of her control. In this case, this isn't a political issue. I mean, it might say that there might be some political influence and so going on, but this is a legal issue, a criminal issue, in fact. And there's a power base, which is the police and the judiciary and the investigation process, that she may. It's unlikely that she. I mean, although we might say she has influence in that, they'll want to make that as clean as possible, they possibly can, if they're doing this. They've been doing it for years anyway, right? But that's a power she can't influence it, really, I don't think. So I think it's an attempt to manipulate the narrative around the actual facts of what are happening.
I would think, and I'm no solicitor, but I would think a really good solicitor would be saying no comment. You do as less press conferences as possible, because the police are investigating still. They'll be watching them press conferences, and they'll be hoping she keeps talking. And I would suggest a good solicitor would say, please just don't say anything.
Yeah. Well, in fact, Ian Smart, who's a friend of the show, who said in a tweet, he said, as a criminal defence lawyer for more than 40 years, I have never had a case where the client was assisted by them holding a press conference to protest their innocence, let alone then refusing to answer questions at a press conference. Happy to be contradicted. That's what he says. But I mean, basically, the whole idea is, where's the lawyer? Shut up. Talk to my lawyer, and the lawyer says, we're not saying anything. It's an ongoing investigation. That's all you need to say. That's why I think if she's venturing to comment on it, that the media should then be able to venture on her to comment on her comments. If you know what I mean, it's a bit of a nuanced point, but
it's like when when someone's been accused of something and they decide to, if you've been accused of murder or whatever, and they always tell you, just to keep quiet and not say anything. But then if you actually decide to make a statement, then you open yourself up to the prosecution, and then they can ask questions.
Yes, well, exactly. It's you're going to give yourself, why is that we page? There's a page missing, I think. Anyway, the point, but that is, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you can say, anything you say can be used for or against you. That type of thing.
Yeah.
Anyway, where are we now? We're at. In fact, that's the bit we're at. Sturgeon decided that proclaiming she had done no wrong was fine, but she didn't extend that courtesy to her husband. Okay, hold on a second. I'll put this video on here. Okay, plus. Video. And where is it? Sorry about this. Distracted by the cat at the door. So, Mary, could you go and sort
I
out
will.
the cat?
Excuse me while I do some cat management.
Okay, thank you. I think maybe it needs to go back to the main house.
Yes,
Okay, right. Okay, anyway, we'll have we.
Is your husband also innocent? And before I say what I'm about to say, I'm saying it as a statement of fact, not a loaded statement that you should read anything into one way or the other. But in a situation like this, I can only speak for myself, and I am only speaking for myself. There is also a difference between me and my husband. I am an elected politician, I am a public servant, and therefore there is an expectation, I think a legitimate expectation on your part, that I make statements and, to the best of my ability, answer questions. Obviously, Peter is not in that position. Right?
Okay, definitely. She's throwing the husband under the bus there, Mark.
Well, yes, she is. She 100%. She's throwing him under the bus. I found that I found that quite incredible. You know what she's saying there. It was long-winded. It was, you know, I would have expected someone in her position to say, well, he's the same. He's done nothing wrong, the same as I've done nothing wrong. When she said I've done nothing wrong, I would have expected it would have been we,
Yes,
instead
definitely.
of I. And then that question may not have even been asked. It's because she always says I. They then ask that follow-up question, and she's opening herself up. And I don't think she knew how to answer it. It was a very bizarre answer.
Yeah, it just seems like a definite attempt to distance herself from the events. Again, maybe perhaps a lawyer. Well, she is a lawyer. I mean, perhaps
she's an ex-lawyer.
But still, she must understand the legal process. Must have watched enough cop dramas to know what's going on.
Or read some crime novels.
Yes, exactly. I mean, some of those. I mean, that's what she does, right? So she should know. But I think her ego's getting in the way of it, and I think it's certainly damaging to the party. It's drowning out other news, as you said, Mark. It's drowning out Humza Yousaf's whole day of whatever it was, Constitution. We can't even remember what that was about, right? Because she's in the news the whole time.
Well, it's and it makes him look weak.
Mm-hmm.
It makes him look like a weak leader, because he's now changing his philosophy of, well, I'm going to do it my way, and he's now saying, well, I'm not going to kick anybody out. You can do whatever you want, do anything, and I won't kick you out of the party or suspend you. He's making a rod for his own back with this, because the easiest, best thing for him to have done is suspend her while the investigation's going on.
Yeah, and tell her to shut up.
And especially when he's doing his big first, and it's his first one as well, on the stage in front of the press.
And no one's really interested.
Well, the thing is, as well, it ties into this idea that he's the continuity candidate. But this is the continuity. The continuity is that whenever you want to speak, that Nicola Sturgeon is going to stand in front of you. Don't never get in front of between a camera and Nicola Sturgeon. That's what he's finding out.
It's like the time in Holyrood when she went like that.
Yeah, I know, that was a real shocker.
Well,
actually,
even when he did his stage, he went to ask questions, for the press to ask questions, and he said Sky News, and they weren't there.
Oh, really?
Sky weren't there, and they give the reason of Sky's not there because they'd gone to Nicola's house the day before, and it was a nonsense, nothing press conference, and they weren't going to do it again. So they never turned up at Humza's.
Right.
And he was left saying, oh, so Sky's not here, next. And it just makes him look really weak and irrelevant.
Yes, it's very weak. I mean, I said in a Talk TV interview the last week, and it just came out. I hadn't planned it. Just said he's a weak man, and he can't control his own party, can't control the people in it, and he can't. There's a whole load of stuff he can't do, and we'll go into some more of that a little bit later.
Well, he's trying to be Nicola, but he doesn't know how to be Nicola.
Well, it's different times as well. So Nicola had the benefit of all that incumbency. She could take off from Alex Salmon and so on. She was riding on his coattails for a long time, and then she was able to push down things. He walks into a bomb site, basically. That's the difference. And I'm not going to feel sorry for him, no, at all. Anyway, okay. So moving on a little bit, we'll come round about maybe perhaps to the same issues again. It's been a bad week for SNP polling. Oh my God, what a disaster. Talking about Humza's legacy, or not Sturgeon's legacy, we have, it's no surprise really after a year and a half, years of bad headlines. Actually, it is a surprise, because what's a surprise is that so many people, 34% in this, would still vote for the SNP in a general election. We have this panel-based poll here. It was in the Sunday Times, perhaps, and it looks like the Times.
It's the Times.
It is the Times, definitely. And backing for the SNP has dropped to 34%, which is equal to Labour. Now, what that means actually in terms of seats is that Labour would get 26 seats compared to the SNP's 21. Quite a big difference. And we were talking to some Labour insiders a few days ago, and they said another few points, and that opens up a whole load of more seats due to first past the post. The first past the post, winner takes all system. Anyway, so Mark, any thoughts on this polling that you've seen here?
Yeah, I think Westminster are going to lose. I'm predicting between 20 and 30 seats.
Right.
At the SNP at Westminster?
Yeah, at Westminster. But Holyrood, I think it's quite hard to figure out because it's such a long way off, the elections. So it's quite hard to figure out. But they are hemorrhaging votes. There's no doubt about it. There are hemorrhaging votes at Holyrood, and I think with Westminster next year will be an indicator and a wake-up call for the SNP, and whether they heed that wake-up call is up to them. Because I think it will be a vote. I think they'll lose quite a lot of seats at Westminster, and I think they'll be, if they carry on the same road as they've been carrying on, especially with the Greens, then I think they're going to lose quite a lot of seats at Holyrood. But it's hard to tell because there's something new comes out every week.
Yeah, well, it's been like, that is true. But I mean, I just wonder how they can recover. I mean, we might talk about that. Maybe we're going to talk about that a bit later, but I just wonder how they could recover. Right. Okay, let's say they get rid of the Greens. Okay, that'll help a bit. But then there'll be, what are their policies? They'll be exposed to us having no policies of their own. They've been, using the Greens' policies. Okay, so maybe they get a point or two. And then Nicola Sturgeon, let's just say, for the purposes of discussion, that she doesn't get charged and the whole thing just blows over. Humza says, draws a line under it and says, okay, well, it's old news. Let's move on. We're going to do the independence rush, de facto referendum, blah, blah, blah. Do you think they'll be able to recover votes?
I think initially maybe they'll get a bump in the polls, but I think the state of Scotland and the state of the policies they do have, the education, the health service, the budgets for the local councils, I think these are starting to bite. And I think apart from their very core, most of the other SNP now are getting sick of this blaming Westminster for everything, and they're seeing through it. And I don't think that's going to work going forward. I don't see that and that's Humza's only tactic at the moment, blame Westminster. So I think he won't. I think he'll get a bump if that happened. They'll get a bump in the polls, but overall, I still think they'll still lose seats.
Well, I think one other thing to consider is that any person who changes from SNP to Labour, even if they're voting in a local election, then that they've kind of crossed a threshold. I think they've said to themselves, something is more important than independence, right? Because if SNP is just for independence, then, or even for running the country better, then that's what they want to say, the proposal, then they're saying, no, we reject that. So what I think we might see is a bunch of people who are coming over to Labour and then who are then going out to their pals and saying, what, are you still voting for those losers? Right, and I think that could be quite a significant force actually, as grassroots force that could go over. I mean, you can talk about the media. Is the media in touch with what's going on? But ordinary people generally have a feel. I'm a believer in ordinary people do have a feel for what's going on. And this, in fact, we can talk about the Bellshill Council election disaster, which is a good example here. Bellshill there, SNP hammered in Bellshill by-election after Jordan Linden scandal, a 13-point swing from SNP to Labour in a traditionally strong area for the SNP. Bellshill.
Well, just to remind us of the history of that. So the by-election was triggered by SNP Jordan Linden being forced to step down as the council leader due to numerous accusations of sex pestery. And then when 8 other SNP council members raised their concerns about him, and I think they thought that more should be done, they were either fired or they resigned. So there was a big dearth of SNP councillors. I think it's 8 plus 1 was maybe 9. And the Bellshill by-election was the first test of what people are thinking about the SNP. And it did not go well for the SNP at all.
No,
obviously.
it really didn't go well for them at all. Okay, thank you for your message of support through the chat. There, Mark is coming back as well. Sorry about that, Mark.
Sorry.
It always happens when
we've never had that before, Mark.
Someone
totally off the air.
Someone is saying
I was left on my own.
Oh, yes.
Sorry about that.
Someone is saying there's no sound, but is there sound? Can you please, if you
I can hear you
in the chat, can say mention if there is or not? That would be great. Anyway, yes. Okay, so we're back to our next coming up after that is the Rutherglen by-election is coming up as well. And we saw, thank you very much, this Bish, for letting us know. That's great. Thanks, Alan, as well. Technical issues caused by Virgin Media, probably, or sabotage, whatever you would like. There's a bunch of nationalists outside our front door right now with some garden shears cutting the internet. Yes.
I'm being told here, Mark, that you were singing while we were off the air. No?
I hope not.
That would drive all your
away. Anyway, okay, right. Thanks. Sorry about that. I think that's the first time I've actually.
That's never happened, right? Okay. So
anyway,
on with the show.
As someone says there, Labour will walk Rutherglen. The petition is out, and we have. Yeah, what do you think about Ferry? Do you think it's going to happen down there, Mark?
I'm hoping they're going to get the number of votes to have the by-election. I'm not sure where they're up to. It's just opened, hasn't it?
Yes.
The by-election. Yes. So I hope there's she's actually been on Facebook telling people not to sign the petition.
Right.
Because,
well, of course she's going to say that. They have to.
But it's madness, though, isn't it? Because I think it's inevitable that it's going to happen, and I think SNP are going to get they're going to get beat. I'm afraid. I think Labour is going to take it. In my view,
you need to be afraid about it.
Well, nothing afraid about it, but no, I'm afraid. Their supporters should be afraid, I should think.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm pretty certain there was a rush of people running towards the Rutherglen Town Hall or wherever it is they're doing the count. Like, come on, I've got to get this thing signed, right?
I think it goes on for about 6 weeks or something.
Oh, does it really?
Yeah. It goes on for weeks and weeks and weeks.
I think they need something like 10,000 signatures or something.
Yeah, I think it's a bit less than that, but yes.
I thought it was like 6,000 and something.
Yeah, well, I thought it was 8. So someone could probably fix that in the comments somewhere in there. Anyway, okay, very good. Okay, well, we'll just wrap this section up, just saying about how Hapless Humza has been. He was overshadowed entirely by Sturgeon, and let me see what we know.
Being told 6 weeks.
Yes, and he'd been told what? Oh, you've been told 6 weeks. Okay.
Yeah.
All right, and here he is. Here he says, I will be the first minister to lead Scotland to independence. Well, there you go. That's a bold claim, considering the circumstances. And it kind of mirrors, though, this one here by Blackford. Nicola Sturgeon determined to lead Scotland to independence. Why? That was on the 12th of February this year. And look what happened there. So she wasn't able to do it. It's highly unlikely. Does anyone think that Humza Yousaf can lead Scotland?
I wonder what the odds are. We should find out from William Hill or something what the odds are on that.
Right. We should. Right. Okay. So thank you for having me. What, Mark, you getting to say about the Humza? Anyway,
it's just usual tactic. He's just copying Sturgeon again. It's the same as what Sturgeon has told us for the last 10 years. So his tactic, he's just back to. He might as well be Sturgeon in a dress. It's just
it's a horrible sight.
Sorry about that. Putting that image into your viewers' minds, but it's just more nonsense.
Yeah.
know.
It really is. Okay, right. On these beautiful summer days, show everyone where you stand with the Great Majority T-shirt or a mug. Well, I don't have a mug yet. Actually, you can actually buy a hat or a mouse pad. Even that's right.
We all need a mouse pad. You should change your mouse pads often.
Yes, that definitely. That's so. We have. Please go to the Majority shop and buy some stuff and show your support for our little show here. That would be great. You can also leave super chat and super thanks as well, and maybe that will help us get a better internet connection. Anyway, we will be back in a second. We're going to be Mark is going to be talking about Lorna Slater and the vote of no confidence. So we'll see you in just a second. Right, Mark, you're up.
Yeah, the vote of no confidence on Lorna Slater. Was it 68 to 55 votes? Just one voting from the SNP. What was it called?
Fergus
Ewing again. Sorry, I'm terrible with names. Fergus Ewing. I was quite disappointed. I was quite disappointed. I thought we might have saw some of the rebels from the backbench either voting for no confidence or voting or abstaining to make a point. But as usual, the SNP machine kicks into gear. The obvious threats come out and the sheep start following again. The gravy train has to carry on.
Yes.
So I think I think it showed again about this Parliament. It's not working for the people. It really isn't. It's more about keeping the gravy train going, and doesn't show democracy in a great light. This Parliament.
Yeah, and what makes it worse is that they like to blame the Westminster for their own incompetence as well.
Yeah.
This law that's Lorna Slater, not law, or I suppose it is a law, isn't it? Deposit return scheme. She's been pushing and pushing and pushing. They knew from very early on that they needed approval from the UK government to do it because it would conflict with reserved matters, the internal market. They knew it from the beginning. And they just would not make any concessions to that. They didn't apply. They applied late, I think, to begin with. They just thought it would be okay because I think they think it was going to be a win-win either way. I mean, there's always a part of any nationalist down inside them that says if we can create a conflict with Westminster as an end result, then that's good. Right, so it was always this. It's always in the back of their minds, in whatever part of their bodies.
Well,
there's always there, right?
Well, I think what basically happened with this is Lorna Slater, who has no experience in such a it was such a complicated scheme to start with, and she has absolute zero confidence, zero experience in dealing with businesses, dealing with the UK government, with the internal market. I don't even think she even registered to her with the internal market. I don't even think she thought about that until late on.
Yeah,
and she wouldn't work with the UK government. That was quite obvious. And what happened, I think, is when the big five supermarkets sent a letter to the government saying this scheme is unworkable. She'd already stopped it 3 times and put it back 3 times because they weren't ready. And when then supermarkets came out and said, enough's enough, this is not workable, they then changed tactics of, well, how do we get out of this looking, saving our jobs and looking good? So the Office came out, will blame Westminster, and they used the glass as a sticking point to then bash Westminster, and it was their fault. And then they came out with the obvious, well, we didn't hear back from the UK government. We asked for to be, internal market, to use the internal market, and it was all lies, and they used that then to bash Westminster, blame Westminster, and they changed tactics so then they could get rid of this. But we have that company, Circular Scotland.
Yes.
And they set this company up. It's a non-profit company, and the CEO is on £300,000 a year.
I know.
Yeah. That's immoral.
It's absolutely
But I
ridiculous.
mean, that's the point of it, though, isn't it? It's to give all jobs. I was actually reading quite an interesting article about it today, and part of the point of this is it's actually the person, it was a Robin McAlpine article actually, and he was saying the idea of this is to privatise refuse collection. Right, that's the actual aim of it, and he was complaining that the Greens that's what they're doing. Instead of trying to get a better public service, they're privatising it, and then creating these companies like Circularity Scotland and so on, and putting all their mates in there and on 300,000, and so on, and it trickles down. So that's part of it. That's what they're trying to do with these projects a lot of the time. Just give jobs for their mates.
The big problem. Sorry, Mark.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
The big problem they have now is if as been rumoured, Coca-Cola, Pepsi, the supermarkets, and the wine industry and the beer industry, if they come together and set up and go for compensation from the Scottish government, that's going to be huge, absolutely huge, because this could end up costing the taxpayer. Well, it's already cost businesses 300 million already. In around about 300 million. Now you could, if this goes to court, and especially with companies like Coca-Cola who have an endless pot of money,
sure,
their kind of profits are bigger than what Scotland's GDP is.
Yeah.
If they go to court over this, which I keep hearing rumours that they will be doing, then this could end up costing more than the ferry. This could end up trebling that 300 million in costs
easily,
and that'll go to the taxpayer.
Of course, taxpayers always on the hook.
Well, the taxpayers.
It could be a really, really big moment in Scottish politics if this comes up, because this I think could be huge if they do take them to court, Scottish government to court.
Well, I don't see why they wouldn't take them to court, because basically what they did was they got them involved in a scheme that was illegal. That's basically what happened. So there's no way around this for the companies. The companies are like, well, they didn't have it wasn't legal when you signed all these documents with us, and you misled us and so on. So I think that, of course, they're going to lose that. But big companies would never suffer from these things, and they're going to put the lawyers onto it, going to get the money out of it, and they wouldn't have suffered from the scheme either. Particularly, they're willing to go along with the government. That's part of their thing. But who's suffering was the small companies who were not really consulted on this business at all, and the people, of course, ordinary people like ourselves, who put rubbish in the bins, and that's fine. And then all these lies they have about recycling. This is going to stop the litter outside the roads, and all this nonsense. People are not going to stop littering inside the roads because for the sake of 20 pence, they are not going to do that. Meanwhile, we would be forced not to buy stuff because it would be more expensive. The cost of living crisis going on here. We don't want an extra, 20 pence on every single container. I don't think so. A
lot of people are angry today when they find out that the Scottish National Investment Bank had put in £9 million as well. And now that Circularity Scotland are basically in administration, and we don't know what's going to happen to that £9 million. Now, the 9 million is probably going to be the tip of the iceberg, as Mark has pointed out on this.
Oh, yes.
But we're just starting to find out what are the different costs that are going to be coming up.
I think
this is costing the taxpayer.
To some extent, I think these large companies, they see these incompetent politicians as easy marks. I think the first thing is they say, all right, hey Lorna, we've got this great system for making recycling stuff. It only cost you 300 million or whatever it is. Oh, you know what? These are other companies that are friends can, buy it from us and all this type of stuff. And they're sort of colluding around these idiot politicians and making a mug of them. And then when it doesn't work, they're like, oh yeah, it gives all the money back as well. So, these big companies are it's a scam, really. The whole thing's a scam. But
Well,
we're
I
the
mean, it
ones
was
who
a
lose
disaster
it.
from start to
Yeah, of
finish.
course. Just, let's think. Now is we polled our followers. Do you have confidence in Lorna Slater? Look at this result here. Only 1.5% of deluded fools, or maybe they hit the wrong button.
More likely.
Of 1,143 people said they had confidence in her. Well, 98.5% of our followers said didn't know, which is probably the biggest margin of any poll we have ever done on there. Let's see what else. Any final thoughts on this one? Oh, yes, of course. Who stood up for her? The people who stood up for her. It's a bit much, isn't it? You can see people like Ash Regan and the other one, Michelle Thompson, was it?
And
saying,
Kate Forbes.
Kate Forbes saying, right, we're going to get, this is awful, we need to get rid of her. And then when it comes to the vote of no confidence, not even abstaining.
No, it does make a mockery of Parliament. The least they could do is abstain to vote and put a bit of a point out, but not to vote this woman back in. I just don't.
Sorry, what would actually happen? Actually, I didn't read this. What happens if she fails the vote of no confidence? Does she have to resign her position as a minister?
Yes, I would think she would have to resign, and I would think, yeah.
Right, but that's it.
We're talking about a woman who came third in her constituency, got less than 1,500 votes.
Yeah, right.
Is a minister on £100,000 a year
plus expenses.
And nobody voted.
She's got her limo picking her up, and she's
never won an election. The only
private boats picking her up.
Yeah, the only thing she'd ever won is the vote of confidence. She's never won an election. So and we're paying this person £100,000 a year, and she's well out of her depth. Every time she answers questions, she's reading it. She just reads a statement.
No, terrible.
It's got to be one of the worst politicians I think.
Well, again, we'll talk about the continuity candidate. Humza's the continuity candidate. He continued with the deal with the Greens, and this is where it ends up. And he's continued with Lorna Slater as well. These continuations are all good news for our side. Of course, it's just a complete disaster. People look at Lorna Slater and just think, why did this happen? There's so many things wrong with it, from incompetence to. I take exception to the idea that she's come over from Canada and decided to, get involved in Scottish politics. It's like, leave us alone. We lived as immigrants in the States and in Japan. Never would we dream of getting involved in local politics.
Well, she's come to the UK.
It's absolutely shocking.
She's come to the UK, become a citizen, and then try to break the UK up.
Yeah, it's absolutely.
You couldn't possibly. If you went to America, you wouldn't be allowed to do that.
No, absolutely not.
You'd lose your citizenship if you went to America and started to try and break up Texas from the rest of America. You'd lose your citizenship.
In America, you're basically pledging allegiance to the flag every day. I pledge allegiance, to the flag of the United States, not to the broken up states.
I think the UK government does need to do some more things to kind of, rein that type of thing in. But anyway, from that level on through incompetence, through this whole scheme's been a disaster. Everything she touches turns to, just a disaster. Right. Okay, very good segment there, Mark. Thanks for that. Next up, Mary's going to talk about Scottish crime. Now, we are going to run a little bit late because of the strange thing that happened with the connection. So if you can stay with us, probably about 5 minutes late or so, then that would be great. Okay, so we'll see you in a second. Right, Mary, you're up.
Thank you. Well, I'm actually a little bit confused because yesterday the Scottish Government's website and the SNP's Justice Secretary, Angela Constance, were boasting about historically low levels of crime in Scotland. And they were saying that recorded crime is remaining at one of the lowest levels since 1974. But the data itself tells us that recorded crimes have actually risen.
Wow.
Now,
okay.
they've only risen by 1%, but they have risen, and it may not sound like a lot, but that's actually 3,000 crimes more than last year. So I really don't know where they're coming from. rape and attempted rape are at the highest level for 20 years, and domestic abuse is also reaching a new high. So these official figures, I've had a look at them. They're showing that the Scottish Government, it's a Scottish Government annual report on crime. It's showing that 19 out of 32 Scottish councils saw increases in crime last year. And the worst area was Dundee. That's the worst area in Scotland for crime. There was over 12,500 crimes recorded in Dundee last year, which means that for every 100 people who live in Dundee, there were 8.5 crimes reported. 8.5 for every 100 people. Now, it doesn't mean that there's every person, has one crime. So there might be some people who are really committing a lot of crimes. I don't know. But that was ahead of the second highest, which was Glasgow, but that was quite a bit lower. The Scottish average is 5.8. So 8.5 in Dundee is quite a lot,
isn't it?
So, I mean, do you think it's a coincidence that Dundee and Glasgow are both the biggest cities that vote for the SNP?
Oh, Mark, what do you think of that?
Well, it just shows you, because when you consider that under 25s getting lesser sentences because the brain's not developed enough, I just find that absolutely incredible. Under 25s, you're giving them a free license to say, well, if you're under 25, you're going to get a lesser sentence for your crimes. Where's the incentive not to commit crimes? I think that policy, it's got to be one of the worst policies that I've seen in a long time. I don't understand it whatsoever.
I mean, we could perhaps understand, if it was like under 18s, we could argue about 16, 18 or what have you, but 25?
When you can vote.
Yes, I know.
And what will it be next? 35?
Well, you can vote in Scotland at 16.
Well, it's
yes, you can vote at 16, and between 16 and 20, you can be voting, but if you commit a crime, then you're not competent enough to understand vote. What you're doing.
You can vote, you can join the army, you can get married, you can have kids, but your brain's not developed enough to admit about crimes.
Yeah. Well, the biggest rise was in frauds, stealing cars and setting fires. Right. So I don't know if that's got something to do with youth or not.
They seem like youth crimes, stealing cars.
Yeah,
I guess. But I mean, maybe perhaps there is a criminal underclass in there, or there's certain things that happen. One of the problems with these figures a little bit is they don't give you much more detail who's committing them and so on, and what age groups and what's the stuff like that.
Yeah, I might have more of a look into it, actually, see if I can get any more. But if you look at the front page of the Scottish Government's, if you put in crime in Scotland, then it comes up with the front page telling us that crime is down and that these are the lowest levels we've seen since 1974, which doesn't seem to be in the least bit true. So I don't know where they're even getting that idea from.
Makes you wonder what happened in 1974.
I know. What was kicking off in the 70s? I know.
Well, it could be just a different reporting as well, I think. But there's certainly an issue, I think, might say that whether there's enough police around. What do you think of that, Mary?
Yeah, well, that is a big issue. So I know that... Well, Angela Constance herself, she said that they're basically going to be trying to work on a new operating model.
Right.
So previously, just going back, there was always a target of 17,200 officers. That was always the target. I think we've lost Mark.
I think maybe he's got an animal problem as well.
Right, okay.
Right, there he is, he's back there.
Had to put the dog back.
We're just having all kinds of issues.
Oh, wow. It's a wild night on the majority tonight. Okay. What I was saying was that there used to always be a target of having 17,200 police officers in the force. But that was, I think, supported very much by Alex Salmond. But it was Nicola Sturgeon who actually dropped that as one of the manifesto pledges in 2016. So basically, and then Angela Constance has come along and said that, we've got a new operating model now. Instead of having the 17,200, we're just going to operate with 16,600, which effectively means a cut of 600 police officers.
Yes.
And of course, there's been huge cuts to funding of the police. They're down, I can't remember if it's 78 million or something like that. So maybe this is just some of the consequences of having, I mean, if you're going to cut the police force and you're going to cut their budgets and so on, then you would expect that crime will rise.
Well, they've centralised the police as well, haven't they?
Yes.
And I think that's a huge problem, because you take away from local policing, and local policing, especially in the borders, is quite important. And I just think it was a bad idea to start with, and it's still a bad idea.
Yeah,
it's generally, it seems to be part of it. Again, it's also to do with centralisation. It's the idea that we can save money, perhaps. It's not just that we can save money by centralising, but it's the power as well. Yeah. We'll get more power. So the thing is, they can take money from other places, and it's just one person you have to argue with about. The head of Police Scotland is the person you argue about the budget, right? Instead of arguing with 13 police forces before, and one of them are going to have competition. Say, I want more money than that one, and so on. And that's not what happens anymore, I think. So this is definitely a real problem. Mary, I think you should.
It's just one thing I wanted to bring up, which I thought was really weird. But guess where? There's an area in Scotland where crime is actually up by between 33% and 40%. Have you any idea where that would be?
Uddingston.
It's all been committed by the same family.
Yes.
Good guess, Mark.
Right,
but
okay.
actually, it's the Shetland Isles, the Orkney Islands, and Western Isles have got between 33% and 40% increase in crime. And I don't know whether Highland Council's got a 9% increase, so it's really, really high.
Well, that could also be an effect on the central because of the centralisation.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on in the Highlands and Islands, but there's
Nicola said
a rising crime wave.
It's slowly becoming a dystopia. No, it's already become one. There,
because
Nicola.
they've been cut off by the lack of ferries.
Yes. Well, that's it. What are you going to do?
Yeah, I thought maybe
it could be that
people are frustrated.
I think
can't get off the islands.
Yeah, families, because it's ruining businesses, it's ruining families. It's splitting families up. So the ferries could be a contraband.
I think so.
Could be adding to it.
Right. Okay. Well, we'll keep an eye on that, Mary. I think you should do more detailed research and find out more what's going on there as well. And excuse me. Okay. Thank you for that. Now we'll run a little bit later because we had some kind of weird thing with the internet. If you stay with us, things you can do right now to support the show. We're at that point already. You can make a donation to the Majority using Super Thanks or so on, whatever it is. Go to the Majority website. That'd be great. Everything helps. It really does. You can buy a t-shirt or a mug, the Majority. We also have the Abolish Holyrood ones and Abolish Holyrood mugs. You can subscribe to the show on YouTube. And if you're watching this on YouTube now, please like the show. That's a big thing. YouTube loves that. And that can really help. Of course, you can tell your friends about us. And you could do all of the above in one shot or over the next week or whenever. That would make us happy.
When you have time. Thank you.
Right. Okay, coming up, the moment you've all been waiting for, it is the highlight of the week. It is a Zoomer of the week. Right, so thank you for staying with us. My nomination for Zoomer of the week is Kelly Givens. Let me see what have I got here. Mark, it's gone. Where is it supposed to be here?
Mark D's Zoomer of the week is Kelly Given.
Yes, that's the one. Anyway, I don't see where the thing has gone. Here it is. Here we go. Okay. So you may remember Kelly from recent Zoomerism when she was saying that the tents on Sturgeon's lawn showed how transparent she was. Here's a thing here of her saying that. It showed how transparent Nicola was. That's the lady herself there. And let me see if I've actually got that on video here. Yep, we have. Okay, let's look at that.
I think actually I massively disagree with that statement. I think the SNP are forced as well to be the most transparent because we are held to such a higher standard. The Tories get away with murder, they get away with anything, and it's like they're not held accountable in public ever. It's like they don't take any accountability. There's hardly any scrutiny on them. I mean, we've had a forensic tent in the ex-First Minister's garden on full view for everyone. We've got people camping outside her house to video her leaving her house. Like, that is transparency. What else do you possibly want? The SNP have been very clear that they will cooperate, that they have cooperated on every single issue. We've always cooperated with any sort of scandal that's come up. I don't see how we could be more transparent. We've started an internal governance review. What else could the SNP really do to be more transparent?
Perhaps
I think
not.
actually I massively disagree.
Sorry about that. Perhaps not commit crimes, alleged crimes, that is.
But the best thing about that video is always Ewan Blockley's face.
Yes, he's like...
He's brilliant.
Right. Okay, so she's the gift Kelly given, the gift that keeps giving, has decided now to defend Lorna Slater's incompetence. She was saying that because Slater should get a break because she's autistic. And where is this tweet here? Let me see. Here we go. Call me crazy, but going after the first openly autistic woman in Parliament like this absolutely stinks. And this goes along with some other claims that people have had saying it's misogynistic and so on. Now, no offence to people who are autistic or friends of those who are autistic people, but carers or whatever, but you can't have it both ways. You can't say that a person, an autistic person, is competent to make laws and then also say that when they're criticised that they should get a break for their autism. It's one or the other, I think. And same with the claims of misogyny. You can't claim that women are equal and then claim that they're special victims when something goes wrong. That's not the way it's supposed to work. We're in the public sphere and you're doing this. It's insulting to women. It's insulting to autistic people who don't screw up everything they touch as well. It just feels like everyone wants a special kind of deal. Of course, if it was us, and we made a mistake like that, they wouldn't give us any quarter, as it were. We'd be kicked out immediately, sent to wherever, Coventry. I don't even further than that. So it's just that type of idea that when something goes wrong, you immediately search for the thing, this identity issue. That's not the thing. It should be irrespective of your identity. Anyway, that's my thoughts on that. And for adding to her Zoomer CV, Givens gets my nomination. You any thoughts on her, Mark? Don't have to.
Yeah, I think that's nonsense about Lorna Slater. She's a politician. At the end of the day, she's a politician. She's fair game for criticism and she's fair game to be held accountable. It shouldn't make any difference. Anything else that's happening in your life shouldn't make any difference. As long as you don't cross the line into, serious insults or threats or things like that, then she is fair game for criticism. And to say that you can't criticise her because of other issues, I think that's complete and utter nonsense.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, thank you for that. Nice support there. That's good. Okay, we'll be back in a second with your Zoomer. So hold on. Right, Mark, who's your Zoomer then?
Greer.
Ross Greer, what's perennial favourite on the show?
Yes.
Okay, you win.
Yes.
Excuse me. Okay. So, for any actual reason, or just Ross Greer in general?
Yeah. I don't think of that. To be honest with you, you don't really need a reason, but I'll give you one. Liam Kerr stands up in Parliament about the DRS, and Ross asks for an intervention, so he gives him the intervention, and Ross stands up and gives this big speech and gives the game away. Right. He actually admits that the paperwork didn't go to Westminster or to Alistair Jack until February.
Right. Yeah. Okay, let's have a look at it.
He's basically saying, and Liam Kerr, it's an open goal for him. And he says, well, thanks, you've just given us, you've just told us what's happening. It didn't go until February. So it did go in late.
Right. So I've got the clip here, but I don't have the Liam Kerr part of it, but let's have a look.
Ross Greer
I'm grateful to the member for the intervention. The Conservatives continue pursuing this line that a request for an exemption from the IMA was only requested in March of this year, ignoring the fact that in February this year, sitting on Alistair Jack's desk was a document entitled Full and Final Proposal for the DRS, but also ignoring the fact that nowhere in the common frameworks does it mention the official request for exemption that Alistair Jack only began to speak about in March. So I'm wondering, could Liam Kerr point me towards the point in the common frameworks where it actually says this request mechanism exists?
It's the February thing.
So he's basically saying the final paperwork for the scheme didn't go in till February. So he's just admitted that. So it did go in late. So what can the Westminster? So it's it just shows you how he's just inept. He's just another one that's on the gravy train. And
it'll be interesting to see what the list is for the people who lose their seats. I mean, of those 20 odd that are going to lose their seats, maybe more even. So I'm not sure if he's one of them. So he's in Holyrood. Sorry, I got confused there for a second. But anyway, well, perhaps he'll lose his seat in the next thing. I wonder, we talked about that earlier, if this constant annoying policies and stuff like that, people must take notice at some point, must they? And then say this is just really not on. This level of incompetence is just.
He's another one like Lorna Slater that nobody votes for. He doesn't win elections, and he's still
Well, I've said that actually, that the system allows, because the people are not forced to win an election, it means that extremists can get in under this list system, and basically the party can just say you're in, even though the people won't vote for you. But the people won't vote for you, but we like your extremist ideas, so we'll bring you into the parliament, and then we'll promote your extremist ideas. And even though we didn't get voted for, it's not acceptable, I think, and it shouldn't be. That's one of the main reasons why there needs to be a reform of the
system needs to change.
Yeah, system needs, at very minimum, the electoral system, what's it called? The voting system needs to change. Yeah. Right, good one there. Mary, you're going to be up next.
My nomination for Zoomer of the Week is Glasgow City Council. So in the 3 weeks since ULEZ was inflicted on drivers in Glasgow, the air quality in Glasgow city centre has gotten worse.
No surprise there.
I mean, really. According to the site data from the city centre, 4 key indicators of pollution have actually gone up so far this month compared with May. Right. And if you look at the air quality in Scotland website, both nitrogen dioxide and nitrogen oxide, which are the gases that Glasgow City Council say that they've been trying to lower with the ULEZ scheme, they've gone up. In one instance, the levels actually now exceed the legal limits. So people were complaining before that, why are we doing this ULEZ? Because the gases already meet the legal limits. Well, now we're over the legal limits.
So the system made it worse.
The system's made it worse. The Scottish Conservative, the Shadow Transport Minister, Graham Simpson, MSP, said you couldn't make it up.
Oh, you can't.
The LEZ seems to be having the opposite effect to the intended one. It beggars belief, coming on top of the revelation that many Glasgow City Council vehicles are non-compliant. This SNP green scheme is already a shambles.
I mean, you think I've got a solution for this problem, right? If there's this kind of nitrous oxide problems in a particular street, just close off the street for a while. How about that? That'd be a lot cheaper, and then or divert traffic around it. It's not that complicated, I don't think. Anyway, we have much to say on the ridiculous ULEZ or LES schemes, and I wonder if it's being felt, the actual economic damage is being felt. We were in Glasgow last week, 2 weeks ago, and we had to park our car, which is diesel from 2013. We had to park it outside the LEZ and walk in. And while we were walking in, I walked past 2 Lamborghinis that have 8 miles per gallon, and they were sitting right there in the middle at George Square.
Yep.
And then they drove off, putting out their fumes all around and using up, fossil fuels. And we were allowed them to walk like poor folk. anyway, okay. So a sad, poor sad us. So you have to decide then, Mark.
Oh, I'm
It's
going to
gonna
give
be-
it. I'm going to give it to Glasgow City Council.
Yay!
Oh,
I
Mary's a
win.
winner.
Yep.
It has to be. It has to be.
And why do you think that?
Well, this scheme was not needed.
Exactly.
I think personally, it's about money. It's about making up the shortfall for the council in fines, and I just don't think it's hitting the poor. It's the well-off aren't bothered. You know,
Yeah,
they're
but
the ones that can afford to go out and get a new car.
Yeah, well, that's true, but
And the
I don't think
Lamborghini
that-
owners.
I don't think there's much money to be made in it. That's the thing. People like us who are in a non-compliant car we're just stuck at either go somewhere else or we're stuck outside. But so I don't think it's not really about
No,
money.
it's false economy, though, isn't it?
Well, they've made it so punitive that people are just not going to. I mean, if it was a £12.50 charge, then you'd think about
Well,
it.
I'm not.
But
I mean, it's
£60,
Glasgow, right? Okay, London is £12.50 or something.
Yeah.
If it was a fiver, say, you could put your car through, then we'd go, right, it's fine, okay, fair, whatever. It's not really that bad. I mean, it's just like an hour's parking or something. Right, okay, fine. But to actually punish you with a £60 fine or £30 if you pay it early, it's really, really very
and
poor.
it doubles, so you can't keep on doing that. You can't use it as a.
I think it's false economy as well, isn't it? They believe the fines coming in are going to total a decent amount, but they're forgetting about how much it's going to hurt the economy
Yeah.
and how much it's going to hurt businesses. They're just thinking about the council are desperate to earn money because they're short. They've got a shortfall. The budget's been cut, so they're looking at ways to make money. And this scheme,
it seems going to cost a good bit of money to put this scheme in. Millions, 19 million, I think I heard somewhere. It's going to take a while to catch that money back. I think again they're easy marks. When someone comes along and says, "Yeah, you can make some money from this ULIS system. All these cameras we're selling. We're a big corporation. We've got all this stuff." They sell it to them like, "Yeah, great." They're all happy. Nobody else is. Anyway, thank you for being with us on the show tonight. And a huge thank you to you, Mark, for being with us tonight. Just your first time on one of these things. I think you have done extremely well. So
we put in a few test things in there for you, like the internet going off and cats and dogs.
Just to see about
panic. Just to see how you would cope.
Yes, excellent. So now that's hopefully when you come back another time, which you will, I hope, then we won't have quite so much trouble. Okay, so I'm going to leave you with thought of the week. The fact that not a single Scottish politician will say that devolution has been a disaster tells you all you need to know about our remote and corrupt political class. They'll keep justifying their incompetence and looking out for each other while taking huge salaries until we stop them. It's time for change. You can be part of that change, folks, and we learn more as we go forward. Again, thank you, Mark. Thank you, Mary. Thank you all for watching and for all your comments. Tune in Wednesday for more discussion and fun.
Thanks, everyone. Good night.
Good night.
Good night.